soon. So Mark, let's start from the last time we had this conversation where we had explained that the crude oil production was facing a decline.
Yes.
Can you briefly explain the current state of crude oil production in Ghana? What trends have led to where we are now?
It is actually still undergoing decline as we speak currently compared to, say, previous years.
Oh.
Yes, it is. And as you enumerated, there are various factors that lead to this. As I explained the last time, there are 3 stages of the life cycle of any oil field.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the initial production stage where you start producing, and so you ramp up production. It increases gradually, and then it stagnates. So that's what we call a plateaus in the area. So more like a flat level. Then it starts declining.
Okay.
This is the natural stages of an oil field.
And this typically will take how many years per stage?
Yeah, usually. So the life cycle of a field in this part of our world is about 25 to 30 years.
Okay.
Yes. And the first field we had coming on stream started December 2010. That's the Jubilee field. So let's say 2011 was just 1 month production in 2010. So let's say 2011.
Okay.
Now we are in 2024. So that's about 13 years of production.
So you have a lot more years ahead.
Exactly.
Okay.
We have a lot of. But then Sankofaji Nyame came on board just recently. 10 field came on board just recently. But there is decline across all these fields. And as I said, there are factors that are leading to this. Some are natural causations, some are technical, and some are, let's say, economical.
I'm told Dennis is joining us. Dennis, good morning. Hello, Dennis. Okay, I'm sure Dennis will eventually get through the technical. So, but how significant is crude oil to our economy, and what impact has the recent decline had on our revenues?
Some of us in the space think of crude oil revenue from crude oil actually as a bonus, or like something, Jerry. You have your normal salary you take, right? You go for maybe the MD comes around and look,
gives you
because
something.
of the work you do. Let me just give you some 5K to say thank you. That 5K you were not expecting it.
Are you saying we're not expecting revenue from oil?
So we've been exploring for crude oil for a very long time. Nobody knew when we would make significant find, but we're living off well as a country before the commercial discovery in 2007.
That's a big statement you're making there.
Yes. So when it came, and that is why we had a certain governance structure or arrangement around it. When it came, we're like, okay, this is just a bonus revenue to the state. We should not manage it like the regular revenue that we get from taxes, from cocoa, from minerals, from timber, and the likes. So let's have a certain kind of arrangement. And because it's an exhaustible resource, its management and exploitation should be in a certain way and in a certain direction. So we get the maximum benefit from the exploitation of that resource. At the end of the day, when we deplete that resource, we can have certain gains to show for. And that is why we have specific law just governing crude oil. We don't have that for any other resource in this country.
What you're saying in effect is that when crude oil came, we should have been better off.
Yes, if we did our work well, we should have been better off by now.
Because a bonus will make you better.
Yeah, I'm not going to mince words. If we had done things right, we should have been better off by now. Why do I say so? Because that's why I use the word just bonus revenue. Let's take countries that have, when Norway discovered crude oil in commercial quantity, it was already a developed country.
Okay.
What they decided to do differently with their crude oil revenue is that they are going to have a sovereign wealth fund, use that fund to invest. outside the economy. Keep the fund. We are not going to touch it. We are going to invest it. We are also going to use the fund to restructure our economy, modernize it better, so we enhance our various growth pillars. So when we say growth pillars in economics, what we mean by that is, you take the health sector, okay? It can become a potential growth pillar. You modernize and restructure it so it can grow. You take the agri sector, you restructure and modernize it so it can contribute to growth. You take the manufacturing industry, you take roads, more like infrastructure. You do this modernization and restructuring so that when you deplete the resource, this
you have something to show for it.
Currently in the United Arab Emirates, Jerry, you and I know that. Now, crude oil production is not the highest.
No, I'm sure it has to be tourism.
It's tourism.
Yeah.
But they leveraged on revenue from crude oil production.
That is a country that is being run like a business.
Exactly. But what did we do? We behave like the typical taxi driver in our homes. We go out, ply our work, the revenue we will get. We come home, we give it to madam. Madam go to the market, buy 2 fowls, prepare sumptuous palm nut soup. We consume it. Then tomorrow the car breaks down, we park it and start looking for money to fix the car.
What an analogy. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's what we did with our oil.
That is what we are doing to a very, very, very large extent, with the exception of what we are putting aside for future generations, which we call the Heritage Fund, which we've not released it yet. But in our analysis of the 2024 semi-annual data, we've passed the $1 billion mark, benchmark, meaning that just after 2011, 13 years of crude oil production, we've been able to put aside $1 billion for future generations. Imagine if we have done that for cocoa, gold, manganese, bauxite.
That would have been a rich country.
Over 100 years of exploiting these resources. Can you imagine?
Ghanaians should be among the richest in the world.
Exactly. But now, unfortunately, over the period, about 4 consecutive years, actually, production is going down. The Jubilee field at this stage should be expected to be plateauing because it's halfway through, so it should be plateauing. The Sankofa Nyame field is a predominantly gas field. So that's where we get most of our domestic gas from.
Okay.
So you won't expect much crude oil production because the gas is the main resource. The oil is just attached to the gas.
Okay.
The 10 field operated by Jubilee. So the 10 and Jubilee fields are operated by Jubilee. The Sankofa Nyame field is operated by ENI, an Italian company. Tullow is a British company. The 10 field is also an oil field. So oil is more than the gas. It is also declining. And as I said earlier on, some of these are technical in nature. Others are as a result of our inability as a country to attract investment into the petroleum upstream industry as a country. Since 2018, we've not signed a single petroleum agreement in this country. Then the question now is that how do you then sustain your industry if you are not adding on fields? Your program, for instance, how do you ensure the sustainability? When I was listening to you this morning, yes, and you were saying that you are restructuring, re-engineering, reconstructing.
Yes, I said
that is to ensure the sustainability of this program. So you are doing everything possible to ensure that this program is sustainable into the future.
Exactly.
To sustain an industry, you add on.
To sustain an industry, you add on.
You add on. To sustain an industry, we've not added on since 2018.
What is the reason for that? Is it that there is nothing to be found anymore, or we are behaving like a taxi driver? We're not putting the money we made into looking for more.
There is something to be found.
Oh, there is.
Data shows that there is something to be found.
Okay.
Now, in 2018-2019, we embarked as a country. Led by the Ministry of Energy, supported by the Petroleum Commission, that's the industry regulator. decided to embark on what we call first licensing and bids round. That's the first of its kind, if I'm not mistaken, in Ghana.
Okay.
It used to be direct negotiation. I want you to come and operate. You come one-on-one, we sit down and talk. Now we open it up for bids.
Okay.
When we did, it was largely unsuccessful. There are various reasons that accounted for that. One, the quality of data that we presented, Jerry, is of low quality. Let me just put it that way.
But wait, Senior, before you go further.
Yes, please.
There is a standard kind of quality of data that you need to put out there.
Definitely. As a new producer, there is.
And why didn't we just go and get those who can produce that data to produce for us?
It's about financial investment into the data acquisition and processing. Jerry, look, I always make this analogy. You see, government sees revenue as revenue. It sits at the top. It doesn't matter whether it's petroleum or tax revenue or cocoa revenue. It sits at revenue. Now, the question government will always ask itself is that, okay, this is revenue. I don't care where it comes from. Should I go and construct a bridge linking Bumpugu to Yo-Yo? Should I go and complete Agenda 111 project? Or should I invest this money in petroleum data acquisition? That is a very difficult decision to make.
Especially when the Bumpugu people are shouting, the Yo-Yo people are on your neck.
Exactly. But then you need to look at the strategic orientation of your economic plan. Exactly. How you want it to move. Okay? If you don't put in, you don't get out. So, one would have expected, what we presented 2018-2019 was what we call in the industry 2D data. No, Jerry, currently we've moved from 2D. 2D is the barest minimum, and that is what we presented. And now we have 4D data.
They've gone beyond 3D.
Oh, yes, of course. It's just about investing to improve the quality of the data. And the reason why you need to improve the quality of the data is that it gives investors certain kind of certainty that if I take with this data, if I go to this location, my work of making exploration becomes quite easier. So therefore, I am inclined to come and invest.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, if that's that entity, that organization that is interested, picks that data and go to any finance house and shows that data, it will be easier for them to even be funded.
Exactly. When the quality of data is high.
Exactly.
Whilst you are not improving your data, your neighbor is improving his data.
Oh my goodness.
Where will you go?
We will all go to the neighbor.
And that is why you've seen that most companies have now moved to Ivory Coast. Just our neighbor, our western neighbor.
They are doing something
because they
right.
are doing something right that we are not doing. There are not inconsistencies in their regulatory regime. The government is heavily investing in the upstream operations. They are creating an enabling business environment for investors to look. You and I know that every investor is looking for profit.
Of course.
At the end of the day, it's for profit. Before an investor reaches FID, final investment decision, they do their payback period calculation, their net present value of their investment they will make into the future, and all those things before they reach final investment decision. So you need to do something differently, especially as I know we'll go into that as we progress in this course. In the face of this energy transition that is going on all over the world, you need to do something differently as a company.
Talking of transition, let me see if I can get Dennis J, because that's where I want to bring him in. Mr. J, good morning. Hello, Mr. J, if you are there. Good morning, Dennis. A technical team, please try and bring him back, because this is where I want him to come on. I want to find out from him, since he is heavy on natural resource governance and all that. I want to know if a conversation like this excites him or depresses him? Because is he happy crude is getting finished so that we transition green, or he wants it? That is the kind of level that. So, how do you assess the level of investment in the sector? Is underinvestment a key factor in the production decline?
From the state side, not from the investors who are currently in the country. Tullow is investing heavily. Tullow has committed about $4 billion over a period. I know you remember somewhere last year that Tullow actually made a discovery called the Jubilee Southeast. And it's a $4 billion they have committed into our upstream operations. So from the state side, we are not investing as we should. I know that we have explored the through GMPC and its partners. We've done some work on the voting basis. So when
onshore Dennis.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
I hope you've been following the conversation with Mark.
Yes, I was hearing you very clearly.
Fantastic.
I'm not just sure why you couldn't hear me.
Fantastic.
But good morning to you. Nice speaking with you again. And good morning to Mark, my former boss.
Maybe he's my current boss.
Dennis, good to hear from you.
Dennis, it's a conversation around crude at the institute that you are in, the Natural Resource Governance Institute. When a conversation comes around the issue of crude, what are your general perceptions around crude in the first place? Do you think crude is something that if it's declining we should actually be happy or we should be sad? What is your general impression of a discussion like this around crude oil production?
Yeah, Jerry, I mean your line of questioning is always very interesting, and the reason I always look forward to speaking with you. It's on the contrary. I mean, we are really not against crude oil production at the institute. We know that countries are differently endowed. It means every country has its advantage comparatively, that it has to explore sort of to transition. And the transition itself is not an event. It is a process. It means that you cannot just wake up and say that you are transitioning without putting in place the building blocks that will ensure a sustainable economy. And so the transition is a process, and therefore crude oil production and its phase out, what we call fossil fuel phase out, it's also a process. And so it has to be gradual. And particularly for countries like Ghana and other developing countries where we largely work, we believe that this transition process must be just. It means that it must consider the peculiar needs of each country, its demand for revenues to sustain those economies. And it must also ensure that the transition does not leave people behind. It means that the transition should not leave people worse off than they were. And so for that reason, we are also concerned about the declining production on our fields, because we believe that there will be a vacuum created if we failed to exploit our natural resources, especially our crude oil resources. There are big budget lines that are funded by petroleum revenues, and those budget lines will suffer if we failed to maximize our petroleum production. We also know that we need finances for the transition, and the finances we need for the transition are actually very huge. In the transition framework, we estimate about $556 billion for the transition. And some of this money has to come from our petroleum resources. Some will have to come from other natural resources. Some will come from external sources. And so all sources of revenue are important, including petroleum revenues. And that is the reason why we think that it is equally concerning for the energy transition, for our crude oil production to be declining, just as it is concerning for our budgets and our finances as a country.
So from the Institute's direction, what do you think is accounting for what is happening now?
Yes, I heard Mark clearly outline some of the reasons for the decline. So in addition to what Mark said, including the quality of our data, size of our blocks, as was indicated, And in fact, let me add that, I mean, the institute was one of the institutions. In fact, one of the leading institutions that convened the CSO bid and license round when we started the process in 2018, 2019. We were concerned about oil blocks being awarded on a competitive basis. But the process ended with the results that our data quality is quite low, our block sizes are small. But in addition to that, I would add that regulatory uncertainties have contributed also to the decline in crude oil exploitation in our country. Governments, particularly this government, has gotten into situations where foreign companies or international oil companies are a bit worried. And I will cite the Springfield ENI unitization issue that has dragged on for many years, and that is signaling to the international community, particularly business people around the oil and gas business, that government can wake up and issue directives that are inimical to business interest, and that our regulatory environment is not very certain. We've also seen a number of actions being taken by governments. So we've had many governments, in fact, both political parties, attempting to revise laws, sometimes for very frivolous reasons. You see, certainty in terms of our fiscal regime, in terms of our regulatory regime, is important for oil business. The oil business is a long-term business, and it involves a lot of money. And so nobody would come and put his money into an environment, a business environment, where you wake up and just change your laws, or wake up and issue directives even against your very laws that you've put in place. And so those uncertainties have also contributed to the lack of interest in investing in our field. And even the companies that are not in Ghana, they follow the developments in Ghana. And so let's not assume that because some companies are not present in this country, they don't follow what's happening. The community, the business community talks, they exchange information. And so that's also an important factor. The other factor I want to highlight really is the global developments around the energy transition. So we've seen a lot of projections based on different scenarios. And the IEA, for instance, the International Energy Agency, for instance, has made a number of projections around how crude oil prices are expected to perform under different scenarios. So assuming we go by our stated policies to reduce emissions to 1.5 degrees, for instance, there are projections as to how oil price will react to that. If we decided to accelerate the energy transition and transition quickly, there are also projections around how oil price will behave. So all of these projections are used by international oil companies, and oil companies depend on data like that to determine whether they should invest more in a particular area, given the cost profile of the fields in those areas, or to redirect investment to other businesses. And so all the companies are doing these analysis. We've also seen projections around electric vehicle production, and that is going to be dependent on renewable energy largely, and also on some transition minerals. And so all of those developments, I mean, we know that EV penetration is expected to more than quadruple up to about 2050. And so if a company is supposed to begin exploration on a field today, which is probably going to come into production in the next 10 years, how long will that company be able to produce oil before the transition catches up and crude oil prices become uncertain? And so all these uncertainties around the energy transition is contributing to some of the investments that we are seeing in our upstream field and the declining production as well. And so I wanted to add these just what Mark has already indicated.
Okay, thank you so much. In other words, crude is slowly becoming more unattractive. Is that
yes?
it?
Yes, gradually. It is becoming gradually unattractive. It's not going to happen as soon as we think it's not as if by 2030 there won't be crude oil. Crude oil will be around for a very long time, except that the uncertainties about price, the uncertainties about the uses of crude oil are becoming increasingly higher, and investments are also being deterred as a result of that uncertainty.
Interesting. So Mark,
Yeah.
from the PIAC direction, how do you see the government responding to the challenges of this decline in oil production? Are there any policy measures or incentives to boost production? What is happening?
Yes. Recently, the Petroleum Commission has given some indication of improving the quality of data that we have. You see, Jerry, unfortunately, we didn't learn the lesson early, even after 2019. We were still going on road shows with the same quality of data we presented that was rejected in 2018, 2019.
Oh, wow.
It was just recently that the commission is trying to improve on this quality of data that we are presenting. As Dennis correctly indicated, much larger part of the ball is in the courts of government or of the state. You kind of streamline your regulatory regime without much interference and whimsical directives, if I can use that word. You create a very good enabling environment for companies to come in. Then you also empower, you have a national oil company that can lead this industry.
Which is that?
Which is the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation.
Okay.
You have to fully empower them, let them go independent, and then lead the exploitation and production of petroleum in this country. You can do that.
So as it stands now, they are not equipped to do that.
They are not, both especially in financial wise. Technically, you can buy technical.
Yeah, technical. You can always
buy
import
technical.
somebody.
Exactly. You can. That's what the UAE did. They imported.
Exactly.
And then when technology and knowledge was transferred, then
you can go back home.
You can go back home. But here is the case where government gives GNPC with the right hand and use the left hand to take. How do you? And the law that allows GNPC to take petroleum revenue from government says that by 2026 they should stop. By 2026, GNPC should stop. Then the question is that, are they financially capable to be a standalone company without government subvention from 2026 onwards? So these are some of the things. So when we produce our 2023 annual report, I had a call from KNUST one afternoon, and the head of department of petroleum engineering was on the line. He said, Mark, apparently he is my mate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's my mate back at Tech. He was like, Mark, we followed a worrying trend over the past 4 years. Have you noticed it? I said, what is it? He said, decline in production. We in the university, we are worried. Can we collaborate and bring Ghanaians on board and discuss this dispassionately? And that conversation is what has led to this program we are about organizing in Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, I've been told about that. I'm so excited about that program. Yeah. We'll go into that. Yeah. But do you believe, we're talking of laws, do you believe the current regulations and policies in the sector are sufficient enough to attract further investment and enhance production, or we should bring in new legislations?
No, I think we do have good laws. It's about, we have the right laws, actually, Jerry. It's about political interference with the law. It's about politics. Yes.
Yeah. So if the law is good,
yes,
but we can bend it and abuse it.
So that is why I use the word political interference with the law, because the politician has the authority or the discretion to bend the law. Look, what Dennis didn't mention during the first negotiation licensing round was that whilst you were doing competitive bidding, and we had good companies coming in, Exxon, Shell, BP, big.
These are big boys.
These are big boys. And they are actually the ones who complain about the block size, that they are too small for them. They need bigger block sizes. Whilst they were trying to go through the competitive process, the state, open a certain back door, trying to engage some companies to do direct negotiations. And this big boys...
But this is acting in bad faith.
Exactly. That is the word. So these big boys, they are not only governed by your laws, but they are governed by the laws of their home countries.
Of course, yeah.
When a British company pays bribe in Ghana, the Ghanaian government can sue that British company, but the British government can also sue in the UK because the laws governs them. So that is one of the reasons. So that's why I'm saying that we have the laws. We just don't have to interfere with the law to suit our political interests at that particular moment. And that's the assurance and certainty Dennis was talking about. As a company, I need to be assured and be certain that, look, these are the laws you have. This is what I have read. I understand them. And based on that, I am coming to invest in your country. And I am going by this law. Don't let me wake up tomorrow and hear that, look, just for one or two reasons, you are just changing the law for apparently no good reason. The Springfield ENI unitization directive he spoke about. Look, Ghana could have solved this thing amicably. But then the government in its posturing, the government in its posturing decided to issue certain directives that are contrary to business norms. Let me just put it that way. That are contrary to business norms. So the other companies are watching and they are like, okay, can we also get into some of these issues when we commit more funds into investing in the upstream petroleum business? Will the government not wake up tomorrow and change its mind? There is no inconsistent policy even between the two major political parties as far as our upstream petroleum. This one says, when I come, I'll do this. When I come, I am doing this. But then, okay, I will consider doing this. You see, but then, shouldn't we all be guided by the laws that we have as a country?
I'm sure these are some of the things that will come up for the discussion.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
exactly.
I have the two manifestos side by side on this machine. Every time I look at them when there is a discussion, and I never see some, understanding or regular distance between the two. This one says, I'll do this, I'll go there. Yeah, sometimes they just change the language, but still. Okay, so Dennis, if I could come back to you, is the NRGI aware of any ongoing efforts or plans to discover new oil fields to boost production, and what regions are they looking at so that we come back and then Mark also stands in that same space? Are there any ongoing plans that you know of from the NRGI stance?
Yes, Gary. We've heard government speak about some plans. We know that even in the production, on the production fields like the Jubilee, 10 and ENI, there are ongoing exploration activities on that. Where, recently the Greater Jubilee project delivered some 30,000 barrels. I think that was last year or this year, I've forgotten now. But, so those are results of ongoing exploration and attempts to discover more resources. But also on the other side, on the fields that are yet to come into production, we've had government attempt to sign some exploration licenses. In fact, departing from the normal practice of awarding oil blocks through a competitive processes. Government is on the back door awarding licenses to companies to come in and acquire data and possibly get into petroleum agreements eventually. And so we are aware of that.
Why backdoor?
Aware that even as we speak.
Then as you said backdoor, I'm wondering why backdoor?
Yeah, so the normal process of award of, in fact, the default process for awarding a petroleum agreement is through a competitive process. And if the minister determines that he cannot do that through a competitive process, he has to publish, in fact, the law says he has to provide stated reasons why he cannot go through a competitive process but negotiate directly. But we've heard of some 2 or 3 contracts signed, exploration contracts signed recently, in fact, this year, where they went into direct negotiations with specific companies. And I'm sure some of those will come into the PIAC report that Mark is talking about, which is a report on this year, semi-annual report. And so there are contracts being signed between the government negotiation team and just directly with the companies without any public tender or anything like that. And so those are what I'm calling the backdoor agreements. But they claim that those are not agreements that are petroleum agreements, meaning that they won't go to parliament. They are just exploration licenses that are just for 2 years. The company will go and look for data. If it finds that there's potential in that field, then it will come back for negotiation and all of that. But that's not the usual process that is defined in law. The default process in law is to open up, let companies compete, let us get the best value out of the best company that has the commercial capacity and the technical capacity and the financial one with that to be able to explore our oil resources. That is the process that is defined in law. Now, I think there are also other elements, and I'll just even cite the example of the Oil Week. I mean, we are actually, many of the agencies, including the Ministry of Energy, Petroleum Commission, GNPC, we have a team in South Africa that is in South Africa this week, attempting to market our prospects as a petroleum hub. We've seen a lot of these roadshows, what they call roadshow. It means that they go set up a pavilion or something like that at a conference, show the potential of oil within Ghana to companies that are available at those conferences and attempt to bring these companies in. Government has been doing that a lot. And we think that has not yielded a lot of results because they've been doing these road shows since 2017. How come they've not brought in any serious company apart from a few shell companies that we see here and there? And so we think that government needs to open up. A competitive process can deliver more value than all the road shows they are attempting to do. They must set up, they must open up, they must ensure that there's a regulatory certainty within our exploration space and invite companies that are serious and assure them that there will be stability. Companies will come in if they know there will be stability and you demonstrate it not just in word but in deed. And so it's important. We are aware of what government is doing, but we don't think that is the optimal way of reversing the decline in our oil space.
It's like we are not learning.
we are actually not.
We are not learning. Yeah. The last time we spoke, you spoke about the fact that Mark, that is, you spoke about the fact that technology had a role in extending the life of existing fields and then the improving efficiency. We spoke about some hot water or hot something that hit something. Yeah. Could you still, can we talk about that, the role of technology in extending the life of these oil fields?
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. So usually when a field reaches its third stage, which is the decline phase, you can prolong that decline stage.
Okay.
Exactly. You can prolong by applying some external measures or technologies, which in the industry we call enhanced oil recovery. Okay. You are enhancing the rate of recovery as compared to allowing the natural energy of the well to bring up the oil.
Okay.
So you can apply what we call, so you drill, so what you do is that you will drill another well just adjacent
to the existing
one. Mm-hmm. Then either you, at very high pressure, you pump in high pressured hot water.
Mm-hmm. That I remember.
That can, melt in a way, melt the oil and make it flow to the well bore so it can come up. We have what we call carbon flooding, where high pressured carbon dioxide is also pumped. Then we have gas injection, which in Ghana, that's what we normally use. So the gas you are producing, part of it, you pressure it at very high pressure and inject. All of this is done with the intention of pushing the oil. You know, the oil that we have underground there, Jerry, is not in a pool.
Mm-hmm.
It's found in the cracks of the rocks. And usually, it's when you sink a hole, because there is a pressure differential between the pressure down there and the atmospheric pressure. Because the atmospheric pressure is low than the pressure down there, we all know that things flow towards low pressure. So that pressure differential will allow the oil to leave the cracks of the rocks and flow towards the surface. So that here is the natural energy of the reservoir bringing the oil out. Mm-hmm. But when this natural energy
begins to decline,
you need to apply external pressure.
Like you're boosting it.
You are boosting it more.
Okay.
Exactly. Because the pressure down there should be higher than the pressure up, so it can flow.
Okay.
So it can flow. We are doing some of them here. But then we can bring on board more interventions to increase production. But then don't forget that, Jerry, this will be limited to just 3 fields.
Jubilee 10 Sankofa.
10 Sankofa. Okay, let's do that, right? How long will that take us? Probably 10 years, 15 years, to maximum 20 years. Then, what next? The answer to what next will be bringing on board new fields.
Okay.
To augment the 3 that is being exhausted. So you now have 3. You need to bring on board more fields. And to bring on board more fields, let's say we bring 3 additional fields. Then we have 6. And to do that, you need to attract investment. And to attract investment, you need to have a very investor-friendly environment.
Yeah.
You need to have consistency in your regulatory regime. You need to have you need to send that signal out there to the investment community that I am not a country that will wake up tomorrow
and change the laws.
As Dennis and myself have said.
Yeah.
You need to send a certain signal. Zed, if you want somebody to come and do more like an advert on your morning show, you need to show a certain trend. So the person will be interested that, if I take this to Z morning show, this is what I will get. I'm not just going to dump money, but I will get returns from the investment I am going to make. And that is basically what we are talking about.
Interesting. It's just gone past 9. We're having a big conversation around a big issue with some big brains, like I like to call it. That's why we call it the Z Roundtable. Big conversations around this table. Mr. Makajima is with PIAC, is a technical manager. Our good friend Dennis J is also with NRGI. He's the Africa Senior Program Officer. This decline in crude oil production, how is it affecting the broader economic outlook, like other sectors, manufacturing, trade, energy? What is happening?
Yeah, thank you. We have one good thing going for us.
Still?
Yes. Caused by an unfortunate situation, but then we are benefiting.
God loves Ghana.
Despite the fact that production is declining over the 4-year period, revenue is going up.
Okay. God loves Ghana
because of geopolitical factors.
So
the Russian-Ukraine war, the Israeli,
Lebanon,
Hamas. Exactly.
So if those things are solved, it means what? And
if by now we don't have this, then the revenue side will have also been affected tremendously. But let's take 2022 for instance. That's when we got the highest petroleum revenue in this country.
But that is worrying, because for the uninitiated mind like mine, then it will give an impression that all is well.
Yes.
When all really is not well.
It's not well. When all things are equal,
you come back down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
Exactly. So that is why we are not just looking at the revenue side of things. We are looking at the other side, because these geopolitical factors can be resolved just tomorrow.
Exactly.
And things will come back. and then you start feeling it. In order not to feel it, you need to do your side of work.
It's true.
By increasing production. Because I've always said that, and it's not even me saying, it's just pure mathematics. Revenue is a function of price and production. Like any other thing else. If you take one bag of tomatoes to the market, based on the price you sell it for, it will determine how much you will get. But with the same price at the market, if you take full bag and I take half bag to the market, though the prices are the same, I'll get lower revenue and you get higher.
Exactly,
revenue.
yeah.
So that's the production.
Because I brought a full bag.
Exactly. So that is why we are hammering on increased production. Do everything possible to increase your production. And that is not just increased production. Just coming back on the question you just asked. If you sustain the industry, look, you sustain jobs.
Okay.
You sustain the economy. You sustain the huge budget lines Dennis was talking about. Just take our national budget and see things that their financing has been attributed to or been placed on petroleum revenue.
Okay.
Look, this free senior high school that we are all touting, despite its challenges, let's have a drastic decline in petroleum revenue today.
Free SHS will suffer.
Hugely.
So if that is the Dennis, I'm coming to you. if that is the goose that is laying the golden eggs, why are we not feeding the goose? Which one is our own cry?
That is what I spoke about earlier on. Government see money as money.
Yeah, but money is money.
You get the point. Government see money as money. Me at PIAC and Dennis at NRG, I see petroleum revenue as petroleum revenue. But government see it as revenue. It
is money that has come.
Should I? Okay. These PIAC people and their allies, they are making noise. Invest in data, increase block size,
3D and 4D,
those things. But then the people of
Yo-Yo
are saying that the bridge linking Yo-Yo to Bumpurugu has been broken down by the Bagre Dam spillage. You are the president. You are an MP. You are the DC. Jerry, tell me the decision you would take.
Dennis, what would you do? Let's throw it on Dennis. Dennis, from the NRGI position, the communities that have arisen and have taken on a different nature because of the oil that is being extracted in their regions. What have you noticed as the social implications, or what will be the social implications if this decline continues and we don't do anything about it?
Yes, great question. I mean, we are actually doing some work around this. We call it the managed decline. And we are not just doing this work in Africa, we are also doing it in Latin America. And so there are a couple of issues around it. So for instance, we know that when oil production starts in a region, the economic, and let me check if you can hear me.
No, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. When oil production starts in a particular region, you realize that all fabrics of that society is affected. Rent goes up, roads are under pressure because vehicles move, more vehicles will move within that area. There are emissions, most likely, even if the production is offshore, there are emissions. And especially when facilities like gas facilities, pipelines carrying crude oil are mounted along those communities, you would see the effect. If you've been following developments in East Africa, there's the East Africa crude oil pipeline called ECOP that Uganda discovered oil around 2006, just around the same time we discovered our oil. They are yet to come into production because they need that pipeline from Uganda to Tanzania to help pipe the oil closer to the seashore for export. And so you would hear, if you've been following, there are these developments, and our colleagues in Uganda have been involved in that work, trying to assess the impact, the social impact of that crude oil pipeline on livelihoods. So we are just lucky that we haven't seen some of the real impact on, say, farmlands, because our oil currently is offshore. But we are still seeing the social and economic impact. We are seeing rent go up in Takoradi. We have seen cost of living rise in Takoradi. We've seen roads being impacted. And if you've visited Takoradi, you see the pressure on the roads as a result of mining and oil and gas activity around that enclave. And so the impacts are there, huge. Aside that, the declining impact is not only within the local communities, it also extends to the economy as well. When crude oil production begins to decline like this, and as Mark indicated, we are just lucky that geopolitical tensions have pushed the prices up or have stabilized the prices at a higher threshold. Crude oil prices are usually very volatile. If everything was normal, if there was no Israeli-Hamas war or the Russia-Ukraine or any of these tensions, we probably would have seen a higher or a lower oil price, because the stability would have created comfort for speculators to sort of predict lower prices. These tensions, if they were minimized, would have allowed international oil companies to get involved in more production and more exploration within the regions. And we know what the Middle East means to the crude oil market. In fact, the Middle East is the hub of the crude oil production. That is where you find the low-cost crude oil. And in Saudi Arabia, for instance, crude oil production cost is very low. In places like Kazakhstan, in places like Iraq, Iran, that are all involved in this war one way or the other. And we've seen the Iranian Prime Minister killed a couple of weeks ago. All of those trends are affecting the crude oil prices, because the peace that you expect within the region that will enable companies to continue to produce is missing. And when production reduces, you know that more demand, a demand will outstrip current supply, and that will shoot prices up. That is basic economics, and it plays out in the oil sector as well. That basic economic principle also works in the oil sector, and that is what is keeping prices high, and we seem not to be feeling the impact. So assuming all of these get resolved, as Mark indicated, we are going to probably see oil prices gravitate towards the $60, the $50 per barrel. And that will mean that the recurrent revenues we are seeing would decline by about 40% to 50%. And that will mean that a gap will be created. Remember, our expenditure lines are fixed. In fact, it keeps increasing. It's not actually very fixed. Every year you see an incremental jump in our expenditure, because we are recruiting. There are more roads needing construction and rehabilitation. Population is growing. Remember, our population keeps growing by about 2 to 3% every year, and all of these put pressure on the requirement of government to spend. And so expenditure will not get to a point where it begins to decline, and we haven't seen that in the past many years, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. And so if you have a major source of revenue like crude oil, and the difference between the crude oil revenue and the mining revenue is that the crude oil revenue can just see a very huge jump within a very short time. It can also see a very huge decline within a very short time. Mining revenues are a bit stable. Cocoa revenues are a bit stable. And so if you have the potential to have higher revenues, you must make good use of it. Otherwise, it's going to create a big gap. And that is why countries like Chile would have mechanisms for stabilizing the use of revenues. And that brings us to another point that PIAC has been raising over the years. When we see high oil revenues like this, the way to deal with it is to make sure you put some into a stabilization account, which you can rely on when your crude oil production declines or prices decline. But we are not doing that as well. If you ask Mark, he will tell you how we've almost depleted the stabilization fund. Assuming crude oil prices come to $50 tomorrow, we are completely finished as a country. We may have to head to the IMF.
In fact, Dennis, as at June 2024, we had just less than 200 million in the stabilization fund. And the intent of the fund is to cushion government when revenues are very low. So, or if there are national emergencies, like COVID happened. So let's say today we have a national emergency. Can we rely on $200 million? That is the question Dennis is asking indirectly. Can we? Over the past 4 years, though there have been decline in production, but revenue have been going up. And one would have expected that as revenue is going up, you put more into the stabilization fund so that when revenue starts falling, and as I said earlier on, Jerry, this revenue can fall drastically if today this Russian-Ukraine thing and this Israeli-Hamas thing ends, or there is even a negotiated agreement today. Prices will come down to about $60-50 a barrel. Today. So it's not like it's in the long term or no. We are talking about now.
What is causing the depletion of the stability fund? What?
So the stabilization fund, what is causing is that
who is dipping his hand inside?
The finance ministry. And it is backed by law. I must add that. The law says that the finance minister has a discretion to cap, or in layman's parlance, I would say that put a ceiling on how much can be accumulated in the stabilization fund. And whatever excess above that amount, the Minister for Finance has the discretion to withdraw that amount. But in that same, now this where we have found an issue with the finance ministry. The regulation to the law gave how much can be left in the fund should be calculated. Simple P1 mathematics says that take the ABFA, let's say we are in 2024, we want to know how much we should leave in the fund and then whatever excess we can take. Simple. Take ABFA for 2023. The ABFA you have projected for 2024. Then the ABFA projection for 2025. Add this and divide by 3. Whatever figure you get, that should be. And in our analysis, the report we will release quite in the coming weeks will show that currently the cap is 100 million. And we set that cap in 2020 when COVID came. And we've not reviewed that cap since then. But if they were to go by the law, the cap currently should have been about $585 million US. That should always be in the stabilization fund, $585 million. But currently, as we speak, the Ministry of Finance says that 100 million should be in the stabilization, which contravenes the law itself, which we've raised with Parliament. Unfortunately, as we speak, Parliament has not sat on our 2023 annual report, and I'm sure it will come up. It will come up. Why the Ministry of Finance is contravening with the provisions of law.
Okay. If we go further into that space, we would see a lot more of the challenges in there. We now know the challenges. We know the state and all that.
Yeah.
Looking forward, how important are international partnerships in reviving our oil production in this country? Are there any key deals or collaborations in place to tackle the decline? Some have done it before. So this is reinventing the wheel kind of a thing. Are we talking to some people? Do you know of any international partnerships or key collaborations or deals that are in the pipeline? Pardon my pun.
Yes. Currently, as Dennis alluded to, almost all the international, especially the major ones, are diversifying their investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Put some in renewables or green energy, as they call it, and then put some into fossil fuel production. We have small companies like Talo, Cosmos, and Co., who are not major players in the grand scheme of things, but are more focused currently on fossil fuel investment. As a country, since 2019, when we closed the first licensing round, we are still negotiating with 3 companies that won bids. Let's say since 2020. 4 years down the line, we are still negotiating, including ENI, that we have issues
with the Springfield. Yeah.
Including ENI. We've not been able to conclude negotiations. And that's sent wrong signal to the international community. Jerry, it's like radio presenters, morning show hosts. I'm very sure probably you have a platform. Talk among yourselves. That is how the oil industry is. They talk among themselves. But then some countries have been in this position before. They've done things that reverse the trend.
Exactly.
One will be domesticating the operations. Indonesia has done that. Angola has done that. What I mean by domesticating the operation is that I gave a glimpse of it earlier on. You empower
your own people.
Your own people.
Like the GMPC example.
The GMPC I'm talking about. They should lead the operations. They should lead the operations. They should lead the operations. Look, I recently came back from Indonesia, and that is the route the Indonesian government took some years back by doing what they call subsidiarization. So, their national oil company is called Pertamina.
Okay.
It has created 6 subsidiaries doing different things. Some are into logistics, some are into power generation, some are into exploration, and that is the route GMPC is actually pursuing currently. So now they have Esploco, they have GOSCO, and they have mandated or authorized Esploco to take up alliances. So I'm sure by the end of probably this quarter, Esploco will apply for alliances. But then
owned by Ghanaians, run by Ghanaians, managed by Ghanaians.
Exactly. And that is probably in part the reason why we have this friction between the Springfield thing and the ENI thing. You know, Springfield is an indigenous Ghanaian company. Yes, indigenization is very good. And we should empower our indigenous companies to thrive. You understand? But then the government could have handled that aspect of things quite differently. But then with the background intention that I want to empower indigenous Ghanaian companies. Because, Jerry, you and I know that some of these things should be very intentional.
Of course.
Exactly.
We must be deliberate
even
about it.
In creating billionaires in countries. Countries are very intentional about creating billionaires. Nigeria has done that. Just our big brother Nigeria. They were intentional about pushing certain kind of businesses to be more like indigenous champions of businesses. They did it. The US does it. The UK do it. Sometimes you do 1 or 2 things which ordinarily if you and I do it, they will arrest us or haul us before a certain committee or commission. But because their intention, they just overlook. Oh, this mine.
Because they want to build giants.
Exactly. Everybody in the US knows that Google or Facebook, Meta, or more like allegedly spies on people. But then, you see, you don't go after such businesses because they're a backbone of your economy. So you intentionally create those things. So yes, the opportunity, the energy transition offers, especially to sub-Saharan Africa, is that, look, let's do in inter-regional and intra-regional markets. Let's develop, exploit, and produce these resources and market among ourselves. Look, West Africa alone, we are getting close to about 350 million people in West Africa. You understand? Ghana, Nigeria, and Ivory Coast are the major oil producers in West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We can come together, strengthen our grip on the regional, the sub-regional industry, produce, supply the region. About 350 million people in just West Africa. That's market enough. Dangote has a refinery that has the ability to refine over 1 million barrels of oil a day. That is a huge facility and a potential economic growth driver that we have in the sub-region, ECOWAS. You understand? So internationally, don't have such partners coming on due to various factors. The energy transition, the requirement to diversify, and our own domestic issue. Economic uncertainty, regulatory
it's making us unattractive,
and those things. So why don't we look within?
Is there any, maybe Dennis can help us here, is there any region within this globe that we're looking at where this thing plays out, where they serve their own people first, or they look to their own people as the primary market? Is it happening somewhere else? Dennis, can you help us there?
Natural resource extraction.
Yes, we're looking at, I mean, from what Mark is saying, one of the key markets we should look at is our own sub-region, where we're looking at more than 300 million people. And I'm asking that globally, is there any entity that does similar, where they look to their own people as a primary market, or exporting way outside their domain is what they look at primarily?
No, so you have to, I think the approach many have taken is to exhaust your regional market before you look externally. And many have done that.
Is that what we are doing?
No, I don't think so.
Why?
I don't think we have exhausted the West African market at all. As Mark indicated, we have a huge market here. In fact, if you recall, and it's because we tend to work in silos. So each country is just concerned about they and themselves, and then they tend to work to satisfy their own needs, which they cannot even satisfy. And when we work in silos, what happens is that external countries, I mean, out of the continent or the region, then take advantage. And we are seeing that span out in a lot of fields. So you know that even the refined petroleum products market in West Africa is huge. Until the Dangote refinery, I mean, almost all of our crude oil demand were met by shipments from the Scandinavian countries, from the East, China, India, other places, which is really not the way to go. We waited how many years without putting in place these measures? And just when energy transition discussions are unfolding, then we are all running, and Dangote has built the first refinery. Then Ghana also goes to pass a petroleum hub bill and say they want to build 3 refineries. Again, very little coordination. We should be able to coordinate. Coordination is really very important, and we have been calling for this within the petroleum sector, but even more importantly, in the transition minerals space, for instance, because that's just a sector that is picking up now. We should be collaborating to ensure that we pull our graphites, our lithium, our iron, bauxite resources together as a region and do value addition here. And without value addition, we would find it very difficult to retain the benefits. It is after we have satisfied the local demand that we can look to external markets. In fact, by satisfying local demand, you are also avoiding the need to look for hard currency, dollar, to then bring in goods, which puts pressure on your currency. And that is what we are seeing again across the region. The Naira has completely been shattered. The cedi has been messed up. Apart from the Francophone region, where the CFA is backed by the French, where we see some stability. All the standalone currencies, and you know what has happened in Zimbabwe and places like that, changed currency like 6 times within the past 25 years. I mean, so if you do not deal with the internal market issues, produce and consume domestically and regionally, we would see the full impact unfold in terms of economic crisis, in terms of currency depreciation, in terms of balance of payment challenges. We would see all of those issues within these countries. And so it's really a very important point that we draw partnerships, and there are opportunities. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is there, but we know that a number of countries are failing to ratify and take advantage of it fully. We know that issues of currency, common currency, and things like that, barriers still within these countries. Apart from the ECOWAS, even within the ECOWAS region, where we should be moving freely, there are still very strange mechanisms that we find to sort of make movement difficult. Even, let me just cite an example for you. To go to a place like Senegal, which should be like 2.5 hours flight if we're going straight, you would need to take sometimes 3 flights to get to Senegal.
You might even have to travel out of the continent.
Yes, travel within the in fact, traveling out of the continent is much easier than traveling within the continent.
Yeah.
And those are simple things that make trade very difficult. How do businesses interact if they have to spend a whole day just traveling around a small region that should take you 2 hours?
Interesting. It's 9:30. We're still at a big round table talking oil and talking energy. In fact, let's go beyond oil now. As the world increasingly moves towards renewable energy, what steps is a country like Ghana taking to develop our RE potential alongside oil production, declining oil production? Dennis, maybe you can help us there before I come to Mark. What are we doing in the area of RE?
Yes, so we've let me step back a bit. You know, as early as 2010, we had this renewable energy policy, climate policies being developed here and there. As at 2010, we set a target to achieve 10% renewable energy penetration in Ghana by 2020. As we speak, we are still struggling to even meet 2% of renewable energy penetration. We've seen bits and pieces here and there. Of course, we know that entities like BUI, which have been given, BUI Power Authority, which has been given the mandate to facilitate renewable energy development, have done a bit. We've seen a 50 megawatts solar plant done by BUI. We've seen VRA also do a bit. We've seen a bit of solar plants in Navrongo, in Kaleo, in Laura. But those are very small ones. 18 megawatts in Kaleo, about 18 megawatts in Navrongo also, and some 6.5 megawatts in Laura. If you put all of that together, we are still doing less than 150 megawatts of solar or generally renewable. Now we've seen a bit of attempts by government to ensure penetration. And if I may remind you, just a few years ago, we saw that even how to get a private company that has invested in solar to sell to the government became a problem. In fact, at a point there was a moratorium on sales. And Mark has worked with the Energy Commission, and he will tell you on some of the regulatory bottlenecks that stifle renewable energy development by private operators. Who imagine somebody investing so much in a wind farm or in a solar project just for government to dilly-dally around and say, oh no, I cannot pay you this price. I will not be able to guarantee the uptake of that renewable energy project, or even put a moratorium on investment or tie into the national grid. Those are all issues that border on regulatory uncertainty. And investors will not invest if they are not certain of payback. And so that's as basic as that. And it applies in a lot of the sectors that we are trying to develop. And so that has been the challenge. Now we've revised that renewable energy target to 2030. And we are again struggling to meet it. And in fact, in the entire energy transition conversation, we are looking to have about 20% renewable energy penetration by 2060, thereabout, which is really woefully inadequate, very woefully inadequate. There are countries that are looking to have 100% renewables by 2035, as early as 2035. You, by 2060, you still want to do 20% renewables. That's just unambitious. And I think it's important that government revises some of those targets. Of course, I'm aware that there are also plans to do nuclear. The concerns around nuclear are very serious, but of course, we have had the experts advise that there are now measures that can be put in place to ensure safety and all of that. And knowing our safety culture, a number of people are still worried about that. But that is a good source of of power to power industries like the aluminium refining and smelting. That requires huge amounts of power at a moderate cost to be able to produce. And remember, even green aluminium is a big deal now. So if you are producing your aluminium from a gas thermal plant, the price and market opportunities is different from when you are producing it from, say, hydro or nuclear or some other form of renewable energy. And remember, globally, there are constraints within the global space if you refuse to invest in renewables. Jerry, I'm sure you know about the carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Okay.
That was created by the Europeans, the EU. That says that, look, if your products are produced out of fossil fuels or high emitting fuels, you are going to suffer either an export restriction, or your price, they will impose a tariff on you that increases the price of your product, and that reduces the competitiveness of your product in their market. And so we have to link all of this renewable energy to our export ambitions. If you want to really industrialize and take advantage of regional and global markets, you have to pay attention to what's happening. And if you think you are a silo and you can build your 3 refineries and petrochemical plants and continue to use gas, as we keep saying, we want to use gas, we have gas potential, we will continue to depend on you. It's not about you. The world will run and leave you, and you get stranded at some point that everybody has moved on. So it's not a choice. And when we are speaking, we have to know that we are operating in a global environment. And so whilst we are looking to use our oil and gas resources, which is rightfully so, we must also pay attention to what's happening globally and accelerate our renewable energy investment. We have more than enough capacity to meet the 10% renewable energy penetration by 2030. And we have even a greater capacity to increase it beyond 20% by 2060, when our transition timeline has been set.
Interesting. Mark, should we consider accelerating investments in solar, wind, hydro as part of our energy transition in the light of declining oil revenues?
Yeah, definitely. As Dennis said, as for the transition, whether you like it or not, it has come to stay. It will catch up on you, and if you don't take it, the world will run away from you. But the truth of the matter is that, as it stands now, fossil energy from fossil fuel remains the cheapest.
Of course.
As it stands now,
yeah,
it remains the cheapest. But then it is also about catching up with the rest of the world by diversifying your energy mix, which in a fine framework that we have, which is power centered, though, we have modeled and kind of put in place how we will get some of this mix in place. But then it is not ambitious enough. As Dennis said, if you're saying that by 2060, you will have about 20% from renewable, okay? But then your framework to fully transition is by 2070. Then the question is that, are you telling me that within that 10-year period,
within that decade,
from 20%
to 100,
80%
jump?
Can you? That's how I said. That's how it's not that ambitious. Okay. Now, what's worrying, and one of the reasons why we are pushing for increase in production of crude oil, is that in the energy transition framework, you have nominated gas to be a transition fuel, meaning that it is the primary fuel you are going to leverage on to transition.
Okay.
Now, if you don't produce domestic gas, you don't increase your domestic gas production, then it means that you have to import.
Yeah, you're going to import.
Can you afford to do that?
You're going to hit your bottom line.
Exactly. Can you afford to do that? So we see where we are coming from. Impact.
So produce more.
Exactly. Now, Dennis made mention of the fact that, look, the world will run and leave you. Honestly, that is what will happen if you don't evolve and evolve sustainably. See, we have a market coming up in the world known as the carbon credit market.
Yeah.
Started in the US, especially in California. It is in Europe. Let me just give me some 30 seconds to explain the carbon credit market. What it means is that, Jerry, you have a company, right? I have a company. The state will give you how much carbon dioxide you can emit in a year.
Uh-huh.
So let's say they give you 5 credits based on your operations. They give me, based on my operations, 3 credits. Then you are able to save on the 5 credit and emit just 2 credits by putting in place decarbonization measures in order not to.
So I have 3 credits
now.
now.
So you have 3 credits. Do you know the opportunities you have?
I can go and sell it.
You can go and sell it.
So the guy that had 2,
Yeah, and he emit 5.
He needs more, so I can go give him my 3.
Exactly. Can go and sell it. And these are company levels. They are country levels. If you go to the IMF or the World Bank or some of these our bilateral countries to borrow money, they will put these conditionalities before you. In 2025, emit these volumes of carbon dioxide, and it's tied to this loan agreement. And if you're able to stay within that limit, your interest payment is 5%. If you go beyond it, it's 10%.
And they'll monitor you.
Big time. Big time.
They'll monitor you to ensure
Big
that
time.
you're doing the right
So
thing.
that is where we are currently. So as for the transition, Jerry, we cannot run away from it. But as Dennis stated in his opening statement, we have to look at our economic conditions, our development circumstances, and go and take our own pace to go, not be rushed. But then at the end of the day, we meet the international, because we have signed up onto this agreement.
So it's not like we can.
No, it's not like you can back out unless you go the US where they back out from the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, but we're not that strong. We're not.
But then we are not that strong to even attempt to think. We can't even think of it. Not to even talk of doing it.
So long-term outlook for crude oil production in Ghana. Are we expecting a rebound, or are we? You should be able to tell us, Mark. Is this decline reversible or irreversible? Are we going to do something about it?
It is very reversible. It is very reversible, Jerry. And as espoused in this conversation, if the state, the onus lies on the state. Honestly speaking, the onus lies on the state. Whether even if current IOCs in the country are not doing what they are supposed to do, there is a state regulator who has to make sure that the right things are done. We have GIPC. That's roaming, globetrotting all over, trying to bring investors.
Exactly.
If they bring the investors and the right measures are not put in place, they will leave. You have the discussions, you have the talks, they will. When they see the facts, they will then decide whether they will leave or they will stay. It is reversible. And that is why in the roundtable we are to have, we said that arresting the decline. We want to have a national dialogue and find practical solutions to how we can arrest this decline. It's happened all over the world. I've just made mention of Angola and then Indonesia. They were also in our situation, but they put certain measures in place to arrest that decline. So in the long term, if we are able, I'm saying if, because it will have to take a will to do that. If we are able to put the right structures, which, look, Jerry, the right authorities know what we have to do.
Oh, so why are we not doing it? It's the same yo-yo Mumpungu conversation.
If we do the right thing, we can add on to. Look, very soon, probably by the end of this year, we open up the Voltairean Basin for exploration.
Oh, we've not even touched that area.
Oh no, we are not doing onshore production.
We're just still in the west.
In the waters.
We've not come on the
And
land.
even in the waters, we have not tapped into 10% of it. We have not. We are currently in shallow to
Deep?
just deep. We have not gone to ultra deep. We have not even extended to the east, which is the Keta,
Yeah, and the
Accra,
Voltarian
Keta,
area.
yeah, we've not. You understand? We've not come on land.
So it's not all bad like that.
Yes.
I mean,
But then, Jerry, it is with the potential for the resource to be there, it is not all bad. But to bring on investment to bring the resource out, that is where the cracks is. That is where the cracks is.
Dennis, a long-term outlook, NRGI, what do you see for this country? I mean, do you believe there is hope, especially with the issues of we not even tapping into some of the areas? You still trust that we have what it takes to pull this off?
You mean the transition? Pull the transition off?
No, not a transition. We're looking at, even as it stands now, long-term outlook for crude oil production in Ghana.
Oh yes, I think that we have some time. Yes, we do have some time. We see that, I mean, oil will continue to play a role, and even up to the 2050s, we would still see crude oil playing a role. Now, the reason why I say we can do this is that there are oil fields. You are aware that the Aker block, for instance, that has now become the Pecan block, was supposed to come into production, I think, in 2021. And estimates are that it's likely to come into production around 2025, 2026 now. There are other fields, like the ENI Block 4 and others, that we can produce. There are a couple of them that we can produce at least by 2030. And if we start production in 2030, as Mark explained, those fields can peak. So it means that the production can rise to the highest level, at least before the transition, if it will happen at all, kicks in. And so there's still some time. And if we have these two blocks coming on stream, and there are quite a number of them too that can actually come on stream as well. If we have these blocks coming on stream, we can reverse the trend. Because some of these blocks have potential to produce about 150 million barrels. So there's a potential. We can actually reverse the trend. There are low-hanging fruits that we should take advantage of. So, for instance, the Pecan block, we are told an FID, final investment decision, should be reached anytime soon. We have to deliberately engage some of these companies that have the potential to accelerate and fasten our crude oil exploitation. It has to be a deliberate effort. Government cannot just sit down and not provide any conducive atmosphere for these companies to invest. You are the one who approved the work program. You know what is required to be able to reach production. If you know, you also have the international goodwill in terms of even diplomatic connections to be able to accelerate the building and the transfer of an FPSO or an oil rig beyond some waters. You are the one that have that capacity, and so the state has to deliberately encourage companies and support them to be able to increase the pace of exploitation and bring in fields that are near production into production, and we can achieve this. It's very possible.
What should be the most urgent steps that the government and maybe industry players should take to, first of all, address the decline in production whilst also embracing the transition? Urgent steps.
For me, I think one of the most urgent things to do right now is to recalibrate our blocks.
Yeah. Meaning
because
what does that
overdue. Mean? It is long overdue.
When you say recalibrate, can you explain to us what do you mean by recalibrate?
So redefine the blocks that are available on offer.
Okay.
So if you know that you want to give out the Voltane Basin, You know, there's a standard size of a block. You know what to do. You can say that we are increasing our block size. It's a marketing tool. In fact, the moment you do that, the companies will, oh, okay, these people are ready to do business. So if let's use the normal plot size, assuming you were doing 100 by 70, you should probably be doing, let's say, 110 by 100, and that automatically will attract people. If I use the scenario of a plot, assuming, I mean, currently we know plots in Accra are even doing
90 by 50. They are becoming smaller.
So Jerry, assuming you see a plot and they tell you that, look, this plot, we've changed the dimensions. We are giving you 100 by 100.
It looks more attractive. Yeah.
Would you immediately go for it?
It looks more attractive. You immediately go for it.
More attractive. We can do that. And we have to also be serious about investing in data quality. We have to dedicate a budget. We have oil revenue as a source of revenue. Why can't we dedicate a portion of that revenue that we give to GNPC, or even reallocate some of that money to PC to acquire data and even encourage? In fact, sometimes you don't even need to allocate revenue for data. If you create the conducive environment, like changing the size of the block, companies will naturally come in and invest in the data. So you don't need money actually. You don't need money. You just need to create the conducive environment for a company to come and invest in acquiring that data. And when they acquire the data, they don't take the data away. Any company that gets into the exploration area in Ghana here hands over the data to Petroleum Commission before they leave. And so all you need to do is, so that's the most immediate step.
Recalibration of our blocks.
Sorry?
The recalibration.
Yes.
Okay.
Of the block.
Okay, the next one.
In data, he said in data.
And data, yes, data as well. Invest in data quality.
Exactly. The next step is stabilizing the regulatory environment. Let us stop all the nonsense, if I may say that. Look, we know that Springfield was supposed to do an appraisal well to determine whether there's any communication between their block and that of ENI. We knew. The minister that directed that knew. It's not as if he didn't know. So let us just, and that's why I can't find a better way than to say, let us stop the nonsense. Let us just, let's do what we have to do. No cutting of corners. It doesn't help anybody. If you, the minister who made this decision, thought you were doing it for the gain of the government or for the gain of the state or your personal gain, it has backfired. The state has suffered for it for all these years. And it's just a signal that these kinds of tactics and gymnastics that we do around the oil sector doesn't help anything. It has to stop. We just have to go by our laws. And we've seen governments trying to do that. We've heard of some new Voltaire Basin onshore policy being developed here and there to sidestep some rules. And no, all of those things are not necessary. The EMP law, as Mark indicated, is enough already. Open up, increase the size of the blocks, and open up for competitive bidding. The companies will come
in. Thank you very much, Dennis B. Mark, would you add to the three?
Yeah, just by the way, Dennis, I have a copy of the policy. Come and have a read.
The two of you look at it over some drinks. That's interesting. So recalibration of our blocks, invest in data quality, stabilize the regulatory environment. Are you adding to this three?
And the economic climate.
Okay.
Basically that. These are the four things government has to do.
And we are good to go.
We
have just about a minute to go. Your event, please tell us about it.
Yeah, so Jerry, as I said, it's a national consultative workshop. Looking at assembling about 350 Ghanaians across different institutions.
Wow.
Yes, with about 21 media houses in attendance. We have 3 sessions. It covers 2 days. But we have 3 sessions. We have the opening session that's open for all, but invitation is restricted. But then it's open for all those invited.
Okay.
That's what I mean by that.
Yeah, I do.
Then we have a technical section where our friends in the media and other partners will take leave of us. Then about 135 experts, both national and international experts will go into a technical discussion mode, and then there will be a closing session, and at the end of it, there will be a communique that the partners. So we have 5 partners: PIAC, GNPC, Ghana Gas, Petroleum Commission, KNUST, and then Ministry of Energy.
And this will be binding.
Is
Dennis going to be there?
Dennis is going to be there.
Dennis,
I'll be there.
Thank you very much. So are you going to give them fire for me? Gentlemen, thank you so much. As always, it's always exciting to engage you in these discussions. All too soon, we have to wrap up. Any final words? Maybe from Dennis, and then we come to Mark, and then the news people are on their way. Dennis, any final words on this very discussion?
So for me, my final words, since we are in a political season, would be that we must watch it. We know that whatever it is, there will be a new president in 2025. And the issues that we are raising today around regulatory uncertainty would come back to visit us. These conversations that we are having today and tomorrow should be, of course, up to the end of the year, should be national conversations. They shouldn't be based on political party interest and all of that. And once we agree, whatever communique that would be agreed upon should be implementable by any government. Let us not reinvent the wheel every time, and that's what we keep doing. I think we should support every process that is consultative enough, and let us go by the rules. Let us go by the laws. Let us not try to be smarter than the laws that we ourselves have enacted, and let there be consultation. Nobody should think that they are the bastion of wisdom and know it all.
Thank you.
Even if you are in government, you are not all knowing. You must still be able to consult, open things up, let procurement laws work, and we'll have a revived industry.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you so much. Mark, you have the final word.
My final word will probably go to the media.
Okay.
Just on the back of what Dennis said. Jerry, we should be asking the hard questions.
Okay.
We should, by now, know the policy stance of the NDC, the NPP. I don't know if we can say, well, there is a new candidate, though.
Yeah, there'll be a new president.
If I can say that, per what we have witnessed, that is their stance.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
It's the same party, yeah.
Exactly. But then we should be asking the hard question: what is the stance of the NDC in? I will not limit it to just the upstream industry, but the entire petroleum value chain. What is their hardcore policy stance, so we can hold them to it? What is the hardcore policy stance of the NPP, so we can hold them to that?
Fantastic. That was Mark Ajiman. He's the technical manager at PIAC. And then we also heard from Dennis J, who is the Africa Senior Program Officer at the NRGI and Natural Resource Governance Institute. It's been the roundtable, as always, exciting, big conversations around big problems, big ideas, and we hope that Ghana is always the better for it. This has been the concluding part of this whole week's Z in the Morning. My name is Jerry Helm. Coming up, 10 a.m. news. Right after that, NYA The Brand comes through with the brighter side. As always, before